Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to Stately Von Manor, where Roger and I have returned. Because it's Wednesday, that means it's Epic Comic Book Wednesday. Every Wednesday, we'll talk about a certain comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. Steve Donahue on his channel will talk about the same comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. It is our world's finest team-up that we do once a week. And this week is particularly exciting because we're talking about Batman. Golden Age Batman. This guy. So, one or two of you might have heard of this fella, Batman. He's kind of popular. He's been the most popular DC comic superhero for a long time. He might be the most popular superhero at the moment. I don't know, but he's up there. He's Batman. So everybody loves Batman. But this story takes place a long time ago, nearly at the very beginning of Batman's career. He had only had a few stories before this one, and I have been rereading all of the Golden Age Batman recently. Only this is my archive edition of Batman, which has all the Detective Comics stories, but I haven't been reading reading the Batman stories in there. Actually, I have a new tablet, which is pretty awesome, and I've been reading them on here because I happen to have digitally thousands of Batman comics. Don't ask me how I got them, but I have thousands of Batman comics digitally, including a whole ton of Golden Age stuff, which has all of the Golden Age stuff in order. And the archive editions, I don't have all of them. So I do have the one we're talking about today, though. And why am I reading all this Golden Age Batman stuff? Well, it's for this thing I'm doing. It's another dumb project, but I'll talk about that another time. Today, I'm talking about one particular story. And it is a very strange story and a very early story. Let's see if I can actually find it. Here it is. So this is actually a two-part story, and it was the first real two-part story that Batman had. And it came out in Detective Comics number 31. This is part 1. And look at that glorious cover. This is one of the greatest Detective Comics covers of all time, and you might have seen this one before just because it is so glorious. And this chronicles Batman's battle against the Monk. That's this guy down there. Batman's looming above him and his horrific castle. But that's the villain of this story, the Monk. And he is a genuine supervillain. So we've got a real supervillain in this one, which was unusual for these very early Batman stories. Like I said, there was only a few Batman stories before this one. And this one's kind of important. There are a couple things that show up in the Batman comic books for the very first time that went on to become important elements of Batman's mythos. And Batman himself is a little different back in these days. He carries a gun for one thing, and he doesn't mind using it. And the story itself is highly unusual. So this is how the story begins mysteriously one evening. Batman is just on patrol here, Golden Age Batman, when he looks down and he sees something strange. There's this mysterious, beautiful woman who is terrifying this guy. This guy's very frightened of her for some reason. And he calls for help because, you know, he thinks this woman's going to kill him because I guess she's trying to strangle him or something. It's a little difficult to tell from Bob Kane's spectacular artwork. A little crude, the drawings in the original Batman comics, but they do have a certain atmosphere. You know, he went for a spooky, dark atmosphere, and I think he did achieve that, I have to say. Now, Batman at this point in his career is based very much on pulp heroes from the pulp magazines. He's kind of a knockoff of the Shadow. He's kind of a weird combination of the Shadow and Zorro at this point. But he sees this woman about to kill this guy, So he rescues this guy by grabbing him with a lasso and dragging him up on top of the electric pole. And he says, "Remain here until I give you leave to go." I should mention that he never does. That guy could still be up there on top of this pole, for all we know. Batman's like, "Stay here until I until I tell you to come down or bring you down or whatever." And he's like, "Sure, how am I going to get off this pole?" He could still be up there. But anyway, Batman goes down here and he realizes that it's somebody he knows. Julie, you. Batman recognizes his fiancée, Julie Madison. So at this point in Batman's early career, he actually has a fiancée, which seems peculiar if you're going to be Batman. You know, if you're going to get married, you know she doesn't know he's Batman, so he's going to have to keep this a secret. So is he going to give up being Batman so that he can get married? I don't know that Batman would do such a thing. Now, we don't know how heavily invested he is at this point because his origin story hasn't appeared yet, I don't believe. I think his origin story happens in issue 33. Yeah, his origin story happens in issue 33. So at this point, if you're reading Batman, you don't know why Batman is Batman. Maybe he just gets his kicks, you know, being a vigilante. Who knows? But anyway, for some reason, his fiancée is out wandering around at night trying to strangle people, you know, which is unfortunate. And she says to Bruce, Batman takes her home and she goes and sees her fiancé, Bruce. "Bruce, there is something I must tell you. A man dressed as an enormous bat found me last night on the street about to kill a man." This is an extraordinary statement. Bruce Wayne replies, "Good Lord, Julie, suppose you had. We'd better see Dr. Trent right away." He glosses over, he ignores the whole thing about a man dressed as a gigantic bat finding her. But he is understandably concerned that she was trying to murder some guy. So she takes him to see Dr. Trent. And scarcely 2 hours later, the doctor says, "Young lady, I've seen victims of an expert hypnotist exhibit your symptoms. Don't you recall anything that would suggest something like that?" "I advise an ocean voyage." Really? She tries to murder some guy and you're advising her to go on vacation? Yes, an ocean voyage to Paris and perhaps later to Hungary, the land of history and werewolves. So the doctor's kind of strange. And Bruce Wayne, though, immediately goes out and gets her a ticket on a ship to go to Paris. You know, the doctor says, you know, you got to go to Paris because you tried to kill that guy. So off she goes. "I don't like the crack that doctor made about werewolves, Julie. And he seemed hypnotized himself when he gave you that advice. But maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe." So we're coming upon an important part of Batman. So Batman at this point is just hanging out in an apartment or someplace. And he just hung his cowl up at the end of the bed, you know, like you do when you come home from being a superhero. You just throw your cape off onto the bed, you know. But then we find two very interesting things. His two new weapons, which both become very important. My Bat Gyro, in which to follow Julie, and his Batarang. So this is the very first appearance of what becomes the Batplane. This is his Bat Gyro, but very, very quickly it's referred to as his Batplane. And his Batarang, his most important weapon, really. I mean, it's the weapon he's used the most over the years, and it makes its first appearance here in this story. So he just let psychopath Julie go off on a ship by herself to Paris. But now, as Batman, he's going to trail her in his Bat Gyro. And in the process, terrifies everybody here in the city. At this point, it's still New York City. It hasn't been turned into Gotham City yet. And Batman's just laughing at him. Look at those idiots down there, afraid of my Batplane. So he gets above the ship, and this is a bat gyro. So it's an airplane, but it has a helicopter propeller. Now, I should mention this is the exact same kind of plane that the Shadow had. Batman steals from the Shadow pretty heavily in a lot of ways in these early Batman stories, and this is one of those ways. But one of the cool things about his bat gyro, soon to be called the Batplane, is that it can hover. You know, it could just kind of hover above wherever he wants to go, and he could set it by automatic control to just stay there, and then he can go down a ladder to wherever he wants to head to. And he does that when he gets to the ship. And when he gets to the ship, that's when we first see this mysterious character, the Monk, the supervillain of our piece. And he tries to go after Julie, but Batman throws his Batarang, and this is the first time he's ever used it as a weapon, and he misses. You know, he hasn't had a lot of practice yet, but he does throw the Batarang. He does throw the Batarang at the Monk, our supervillain, and misses. Now, how did the Monk get on this ship? Who knows? We don't know. But he misses, the Monk gets away, and Batman searches for him once they get into Paris. And he's going all over the place in Paris, jumping on vehicles and whatever. And at last he finds Julie. And this is an interesting part of the story. He goes in to see his fiancée when he's attacked by a giant gorilla. A giant gorilla has just been hanging out in Julie's apartment. I mean, obviously he's been left there. He's been left there by the Monk. And Batman, you know, dodges the giant ape. He falls into a trap door, lands on a net, and he is in the Monk's trap. He's been trapped by the Monk. And he's in this terrible net here. Now, one thing that Batman, when he first started out, forgot to equip himself with is a knife. Apparently, even his Batarang at this point can't cut things. It's just not sharp enough. He fixed that. But at this point, he's above a pit of snakes, and he's stuck in this net. So he needs to get out. So he swings his Batarang, which stops the downward flight of because the net is dropping. It stops the net from dropping. He also busts this lamp or whatever it was, gets himself some glass that he catches, cuts himself out of the net, goes after the Monk, but he's not quick enough, and a cage falls on him. So he's trapped again. He's in the second trap. And the Monk lowers, right now he's lowering the giant gorilla who was in the other room. The gorilla's still around. He seems much larger now than he did before, though. And so he lowers the gorilla, but Batman immediately jumps onto the hook that lowered the gorilla, and, you know, now he's up here. He does knock out one of the Monk's henchmen with his Batarang, so he's getting better with it. And he sees this car going down the road, and he thinks maybe the Monk is in there. He stops the car, finds out it's just Julie in there. He tossed a bunch of gas into the car, and that knocked her out. And so he at least rescues Julie from the Monk, but the Monk is still at large. So we go to the next issue, issue 32. And now not every issue had a cover of the Batman at this point. But he is up here because Batman, even though he's only been in a few issues, he's selling this comic, Detective Comics, at this point. And why wouldn't he? Look at him. There's the Batman, looking all mysterious. So following his fiancée, the Batman, in reality Bruce Wayne, has trailed a sinister figure cowled like a monk into Hungary. Like an animal of prey, the Batman watches his quarry. And so the Batman's kind of swinging around in the trees here. Sees a coach, jumps on the coach. Is that Julie? No, it's a mysterious woman. And so he decides to just kidnap this lady. He just kidnaps her and brings her back to wherever Julie is hanging out at his hotel, which looks kind of like a castle. But he brings this strange woman to this hotel. "Who are you?" says Julie. "My name is Dala. I seem to have been kidnapped by your friend here. Your friend who's dressed like a big bat." She doesn't seem all that concerned, though. So Batman decides he's going to watch over him, so he's sleeping by the door. But all of a sudden, the woman Dala wakes up and she starts wandering around. And Batman's like, what the heck is going on with this woman? But she's only playing. She immediately grabs the statue and knocks Batman upside the head. Like I said earlier, this is Batman early in his career. He's not all that great of a vigilante at this point. And so she got the drop on him. But he's going to go after her. But when he goes in to check on his girlfriend, his fiancée Julie, he finds out there's 2 red marks on her throat. The marks of the vampire. Now here's another first for Batman. Supernatural villains. That's right. It turns out that this woman Dala and the monk, who's really just her stooge, or at least he seems that way, they're a couple of vampires. They're vampires. And we find out later that they control werewolves. You know, so we got all kinds of supernatural shenanigans going on in this early story of Batman. I told you, man, this one's weird. Eventually, she catches up with her, grabs her, takes her on the bat plane. And it's at this point, it is called the bat plane, by the way. And a giant silver net that seems to operate by magic. It operates by magic. Suddenly shoots into the sky and drags the bat plane earthward. So there's a magic net. It drags Batman down where Batman is immediately hypnotized by the evil monk. You think the monk could have done this earlier, but he decided to save his hypnotism for this issue. So he hypnotizes Batman, and Batman has to follow along. And meanwhile, he uses his hypnotic powers to call to the vampire victim Julie to have her follow so that he can have her eaten by werewolves in front of Batman. You know, because, you know, he's frankly terrible, this villain. And so Batman, though, is, in the meantime, thrown into a pit full of werewolves. And he has to do something with these werewolves. Fortunately, at this point, he has a utility belt, and it's full of gas pellets. And the werewolves seem susceptible to gas pellets. Actually, these might just be regular old wolves, actually, at this point. It's hard to say. They're either wolves or werewolves, but either one. He's knocking them out with the gas pellets. And he keeps knocking them out. But he has to figure out how to get out of here. And just by throwing his rope won't reach high enough. He needs to weigh it down, and this is the first time he ever attaches his batarang to the rope so that will help him get out. Now, this is something that he did a lot later on, but this is the first time he ever does it. The first time he ever attaches a rope to a batarang to get him out of a jam. So Batman gets out of the pit. Now he's got to go find these vampires. Fortunately, you know, they sleep during the day. Now he does an unusual thing. So he finds a silver statue. And so Batman knows just what to do. And he's got to do it quick because there's only one page left in this story. A silver statue. While the vampires sleep during the daytime, I shall melt this statue and make 2 silver bullets. One for Dala and one for the monk. Only a silver bullet may kill a vampire. So Batman might have his supernatural monster information a little screwy. This is the only time I've ever heard of a silver bullet killing a vampire. But, you know, this is the olden days. And, you know, maybe Batman just didn't know a whole lot about vampires. You know, maybe not. But he does make some silver bullets. He finds the monk, who's not in his monk outfit right now because he's just, you know, hanging out as his regular vampire self. And Batman proceeds to shoot them both dead with the silver bullet. Remember, Batman at this time carried a gun, as you can see in the next issue's cover, and he wasn't afraid to shoot folks with it, especially vampires. So he kills both the vampires, saves Julie, and they fly off together in the Batplane. And that is Batman's battle against the monk, which I thought was fantastic and ridiculous. Now, a lot of these early Batman stories are a little screwy, but this one was really nuts. We had vampires, we had werewolves that maybe were just regular wolves, who knows? They could be low-rent monsters, who knows? But, you know, we had mysterious castles, we had a genuine supervillain in the monk, the introduction of the Batplane, which he crashed later on and replaced it with one without, you know, it was just a regular plane when he got it back, I think. And he doesn't have the Batmobile yet, but he does have a Batarang. He has a car, you know, but it's just a regular car. It's not the Batmobile yet. But he's working on things, you know? He's working on stuff. Eventually, he does dump Julie, the fiance. I can't remember how, but he does get rid of her. So that seems like a wise decision. But all in all, a great story. Didn't you like it, Roger? Roger thought it was fantastic. Okay, guys, I will catch you next time.